And good evening, everyone, to the final round of the PSGL F3 Championship in Season 32 here in Austin, Texas. My name is Felix. I'm going to be your commentator for tonight. Once again, as always, joined by Jake. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening. For the last time this season, it's race day, and I'm very much excited to see what Austin brings. Traditionally, a fast-flowing circuit, loads of overtaking opportunities, and even though we haven't got a title decided to bring you, if a title didn't give it away already, we should still have a great racing prospect and an opportunity to see these guys for the last time before they go for a quick break and then regroup for next season.
Yeah, with probably some changes here and there inside each division. We're pretty sure Max is going to be part of F2 next season, as he was dominating the championship for the end of, or for the second half of the season, I should rather say, with a post-race penalty from Oberak last week that sent him down into P6, I think, or P5. I think P6 it was, which in the end cost him the race win and gave Max his fifth win in a row now, and his sixth win in total this season.
Yeah, that's it's a crazy streak he's been on. Just as like 4 races ago, it looked like we were gonna have the closest title battle ever, and then Max has just absolutely stormed away with it. A little bit Sebastian Vettel 2013-esque, I would say, where the start of the season looked really close, and then he just absolutely romped away with it. But fair play to him. You can't say that he hasn't deserved it. We've had some very good, entertaining fights for the win. It's not like he's ran away with all the races, but nevertheless, we'll see what tonight brings. The pressure's off Max now. Not that he's particularly looked like cracking under it. We thought, like you say, we had a different race winner with Mobarak last week, but that wasn't to be. And it'll be interesting what the likes of him, Johan, and a couple of others can do to see if they can end this season on a high, or if Max will take his fifth win in a row.
Yeah, always when I see the Coulter track here, I always have to think of F from the 2015 season, where Rosberg and Hamilton were fighting for the championship, and it looked like Rosberg could take it to the next round, but then like 10 or 15 laps before the end, the famous gust of wind came along and sent Rosberg's car off the track and handed Lewis Hamilton his, at that time, third championship. Now he stands at 7. And yeah, after that race, Rosberg went on to a 6-race win streak, as Max can make it 5-race win streak this evening. He might be able to do something similar to what Rosberg did and carry that momentum over into the next season if he wins here tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see if Max, because I'm very much excited to see what he can do if he is indeed an F2, which I'd be shocked if he's not next season, because I think he really could wrestle a few feathers in that division. As Johan takes provisional pole by a margin that really caught my eye. So I know it's only early lap times coming in, but 7/10 of a second, now 4/10, as Ryman pops it in P2. These early laps see quite a field spread, and I think Austin's one of those circuits. Its traction can be very difficult to get out at certain corners, and you can see a greater field spread around this track than maybe you'd get at some others.
Yeah, I feel like Austin is really a track where either you're good at it or it's one of your worst tracks. I feel like the difference around here is always a bit bigger than it is in comparison to other tracks. Even tracks that are way longer in terms of the mileage, like Spa. I feel like the difference is it's in Spa in terms of qualifying times is a bit less than it is around here, because it's a very odd track, I would say. You have the first sector, or the beginning of the second sector as well, that really feels like Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel in Silverstone with the S section. Then you've got a very technical part in the third sector, and the track in general is very, very wide indeed, so it's not always easy to place the car on the right part of the track to gain the best momentum, because if you break into a corner too far on the outside, you will not get the nicest and tightest line through that corner that you could get if you break a bit more from the center of the track. So I feel like the width of the circuit is definitely a key factor, and I also feel like turn 1 is not a place to be inside the midfield on the opening lap. We saw in real life many times that something can happen there, or even at the front with George Russell in 2022. Yeah, going into Carlos Sainz. So not a place you want to be, particularly at the start.
No, definitely not. It's one of those first corners where things usually happen, and if, like you say, if you're in the midfield, there's much more chance of it happening to you because of that concertina effect. We've got the first lap times in from everybody, apart from those, of course, who invalidated. And also Max, who didn't actually go out onto the track. I wonder if he's fancying maybe challenging himself and starting from the back tonight. That would be quite interesting to see. And I mean, why not? He doesn't have anything to prove at this point, so maybe that's what he's doing. It would be it'd certainly give us something to watch out for in the race if that was the case.
Yeah, well, maybe it has been a bit too easy for him in terms of the championship standings towards the end of the season. With that mega run, he's had 4 race wins in a row, like we said, multiple times. But you can't mention it enough, just because the divisions are usually so close and the drivers are so equal in terms of pace inside the divisions. And it's very impressive to see a driver come out and take 4 race wins in a row. That it's really something special, and you don't really see it all too often in PSGL.
No, absolutely. It's an incredible feat, and like I say, as well as that, you've got safety cars, strategies. You know, there's so many variables that happen over a race distance. I think the only race I can remember that we had but didn't have a safety car was Australia, and I only remember that because we talked about Black Box wanting it all race and it never happened. But apart from that, I think we've had safety cars at pretty much every race, and they usually throw the race upside down with strategy. So for one driver to be able to maintain such a good record is pretty incredible. And yeah, you take your hat off to him, and he could still single-handedly win the Constructors' Championship tonight, which would also be quite a feat in itself. He's got I believe it's a 6-point margin to Aston Martin in front, and he's essentially going to be fighting that battle on his own, as he has done all season, because his teammate Victor has only actually scored 1 point this season. So to say he could still win the Constructors' fight, even if he doesn't win it, to say he's in contention going into the final race, given that he's basically been fighting it on his own, yeah, that's quite something. And up against Johan and Jabraka and the Aston Martins, they've been pretty good this season too. So it's not like he's up against a team that's not formidable.
Yeah, I think now as we are in the last round and there's nothing to play for except from the Constructors' Championship, like you've mentioned, but you can't really focus on that all too much, because it really looks like Max is going for a last to first challenge here tonight. We can talk about each driver's season a little bit, and as I'm watching Kryptonite, I feel like he had a good start to the season in terms of raw pace, was struggling with consistency, and I feel like that consistency came back towards the latter stages of the season, towards the last couple of races, but he had to sacrifice his pace with that, and I feel like he didn't ever find the right balance between consistency and pace over the entire course of the season, as he sits in 7th in the championship now, coming into this last round, as we really felt like he was one to look out for, as he slightly improves and only goes into P12. He had the pace, and we've seen that in the first couple of races where he was fighting for wins, for podiums, where he made just those little mistakes, and we all thought, well, he just needs to cut them down, and then he's up there, he's in that fight. But once he cut those mistakes out, he was just never back up there consistently enough, and that's what cost him in the end. That's what cost him a fight for the championship. And his teammate Rick, similar thing, just his pace just generally dropped off towards the later stages of the season, and he had a lot of bad luck. I remember Belgium, where he was finally nearly able to break that streak of bad luck he had until that puncture on the final lap came, and his podium hopes were crushed, and with that also his hopes for a championship fight, as he seemed to be the man to beat after 3 rounds. In the end, he wasn't even the last guy to be able to fight for the championship, as Black Box overtook him in the standings.
Yeah, I think both Alfa Romeos, their season promised so much, but in reality has delivered so little. They'll both be very disappointed with how it's gone. I think particularly Rick, after that good start he had. But he has suffered with bad luck. He has had things go against him. And, you know, Rick is clearly a very talented driver. And as he kind of proves that by going up to P3 in this qualifying session. And yeah, for Kryptonite, it was either the pace was lacking or the consistency was lacking. You never seem to have both of those things come together. He's had those 2 third-place finishes, but other than that, he's kind of gone a bit missing. So yeah, not the season he would have hoped for. I would expect, I mean, we don't know how replacements are going to work. We don't know how many new drivers are going to be applying, but I would expect if we are commentating on this division again, that we're probably going to see Kryptonite and Rick on this grid again, because although they probably haven't done enough to go up to F2, they've certainly proved that they can be a big threat in this division.
Yeah, and obviously you learn from everything you do, and even those mistakes, even though people think that those mistakes have really cost him some opportunities in this season, he will still have a lot to learn from those things that happened to him, that he caused himself or maybe others. And that is in the end what makes you stronger and better as a racing driver. And with that freshly gained experience, even though he is already a very experienced guy, Kryptonite, I think he probably will be able to then improve on certain things here and there, and maybe then, you know, get the consistency together to in the end be fighting for the championship until the final round.
Yeah, which is ultimately what you want as a driver. You don't want to come into this final race feeling like it's a bit of there isn't much riding on it for you, you know. And this session so far will not please Kryptonite. He's currently the slowest of all drivers. He's done 2 lap times, so it's not for that. And maybe Austin is not a track he particularly enjoys. I think ultimately, I mean, one driver who I'm looking at the moment who's on a lap is Alberto there. Looking at his season as a whole, again, he's another one of those drivers I think who would have hoped for a bit more. He hasn't started quite a few races, which hasn't helped, to be fair. He has missed 4 of the races, but even then he's had 3 no scores, and although he's had been the points on 3 occasions, they haven't been high scoring positions. And I think Alberto's biggest problem, I think, is actually not been qualifying high enough. I think he's not been right at the back of the field either, but too many times he's been in the midfield, and as you mentioned, particularly around a track like this, you almost become a bit of a magnet for collisions if you're in that midfield group, and Alberto, I don't think, has had, at times, the good luck needed when he's been starting in the middle of the field, and that's put pay to any chance of him getting a good result.
Yeah, in the end, you will look back at the season and think what could have been, what should have been, but it doesn't matter if you look at the championship standings. You just have to live with it and learn from it. That's all you can do. As Alberto once again pits because he doesn't think it's going to be a good enough lap time to put him high up in that grid at the moment, as he has to stop now because his teammate Denzo is just about to exit the pit lane, and it could get close with the remaining time for Alberto now. And yeah, it looks like Max is really going for a last to first race here. I mean, understandably, but a bit of a what's the word for it? I'll just be nice and call it a confident move. But it's a bit of a disrespect to the other drivers as well, in my opinion. But yeah, at least he wants to give us a good show for tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. He's not coming back on the track by the looks of it, and if he's, I mean, I'm just trying to see if there's anyone else. Alberto might struggle to complete a lap in time. Kieran's left it quite late, actually. He's going to have to get on with it on his out lap, that's for sure. Alberto, is he trying to go out on track? No, I think his session's done. He might regret not finishing that lap. So here we go then. People are getting ready to start their final flying laps, and I believe the first driver to attempt his final run is Hersey, currently sitting in P8. I didn't realise Hersey had only got 3 points this season, and that's despite starting 8 races. And that sort of surprises me, actually, you know, just looking at it from the outside there, because in quite a few qualifying sessions, I'd say Hersey's shown a pretty decent turn of pace. So I don't know where his season's gone wrong, but yeah, 3 points is an alarmingly low number for someone who's clearly not a slouch.
Yeah, I was surprised, as you just mentioned, that he's only got 3 points, because if you would have asked me, I would say he's got a lot more than that in the end, but looks like he just didn't get it together in total for a solid championship point standing. But maybe here in this last race he can try and deliver something, as he might have abandoned his lap already. Yes, he has, looks like. Or has he? Because his rear lights are on. Yeah, I think he's in non-ERS deployment mode with... No, that's not a McLaren behind him, that's an Alfa Romeo behind him, sorry. I was looking for McLaren, and it's not Rick, it is Kryptonite, who's currently last out of everyone who's out on a lap, and he is a bit more than a tenth down on his time, so it looks like it won't be the best of starting positions for Kryptonite.
No, it will not be. Alberto did not make the checkered flag. It was always going to be a tough ask for him. I think Kryptonite is the next one on a lap. We've also got a Ferrari just behind him. That is ASY, who's on a potentially an improvement lap. It's very close. But Kryptonite really needs to find something here. Currently the slowest of all the lap times we've got. He was P16. Kryptonite goes across the line, moves up to 13. In fact, we won't be happy with that, though. ASY across the line, he doesn't improve. Is there anyone who could take provisional pole off Johan?
Molbarak still on a lap. Johan improves even more, and that might have secured him that pole position for tonight as Molbarak comes across the line. And yes, it has. That improvement was necessary, otherwise Molbarak would have had that pole position here tonight. Gabriel is still out on a lap as he comes around the final corner, and he comes across the line. Where does he end up? Only with a half of a tenth improvement, and that is going to be P3, right ahead of his teammate Ryman, as Rick pits because he invalidated his lap. And Kieran is, I believe, one of the last guys now to be out, as looks like Vengeance has spun. Kieran is slightly up on his time. Let's see where he can go. Maybe inside the top 10. Yes, he can. Well inside the top 10. Up to P6 goes the AlphaTauri driver. And Vengeance dives into the pit lane. And that means we have our grid for the final race of the season set.
Yeah, and a couple of surprising names up near the front. I wouldn't say the front row is too surprising. Johan were a great lap for pole position. He needed that improvement on his last attempt because there was others charging behind him. Molbarak continues his fine form from last week, even if he didn't quite end up with a result post-race that he wanted. Still showed that he's capable in P2. And I think the second row for me is what's surprising. You've got 2 reserves who we haven't seen a lot of in Gabriel and Ryman popping it on the second row. So a bit of unknown quantities there in the 2 Haas cars.
Johan is willing to do everything he can to secure that Constructors title, along with his teammate Jabraka, who will be starting in 10. And as long as they get a total of, let me do the maths in my head, a total of 12 points together, they are secured as the Constructors champion. Is that right? I think that is right.
Yeah, 11 points, I think, would be. Oh, yeah, 12 points, actually, yeah,
because of the
cause
fastest lap.
fastest lap.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
with 12 points combined, they would be our constructors champions with Aston Martin, and as Max starts from the back of the grid, let's be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if Max would still win this race.
I mean, I really would just display quite an incredible turn of speed and confidence in his own ability. But we'll see what happens in the race because we've got some different drivers near the front and no Max there, so a real chance for some of these guys to impress. And I'm excited to see what happens because I think Austin's that kind of place where we're going to get some surprises. And of course, we'll keep an eye on Max from the back and see how he gets on because it's a very different race for him. He's been so used to leading from the front, and maybe he's preparing himself for F2. Maybe he's thinking, look, I'm probably not going to be on pole position every race in F2, so I kind of need to get used to racing in traffic. So maybe that's part of his thinking as well.
It would be a big planning ahead from him, but I wouldn't be surprised because Max seems like such a, well-controlled race driver. All that pressure that was put on him throughout the entirety of the season and for the majority of the races as well. I remember Australia, him being under immense pressure from behind, and he still was able to, hold on to that race win. And he was just a great driver all in all. As the lights now come on for the final time this season, and we are underway in Texas. It seems to be a better start from Oberak in second place. Kenny challenged Johan coming down into turn one. He has got the inside line up the hill we go as the Haas breaks late, but he manages to avoid the rear end of that Ferrari as Oberak still has that inside line, which now turns into the outside. It looks like Johan has kept that lead for now, with Gabriel being in third, Rig right behind him, and then Ryman lost a place, has dropped down into fifth. Kieran's still in sixth, and Denzo has just gone past as I say that, he just lost the position once again. And we've got an AlphaTauri of Damiano being alongside Hersey here, and he's now got the inside, and he's passed the Alpine driver, as both Alpines are fighting each other now as well.
Yeah, nice and clean race start from everybody. Actually, we haven't had anyone crashing or spinning at the back, which is good to see. And Mobarak couldn't quite do enough to grab the lead. But nice job from Rick there to split the two Haas cars as we've got a fight potentially for P5. Oh, and Ryman very late on the brakes, nearly got into the back of Rick. And Kieran now to defend from ASY behind. Some nice racing overall, and I would say, based on that, Johan would be reasonably happy with his start, but he's coming under some pressure from Mobrak. He's not been able to drop him on his opening lap.
Yeah, it looks like Johan was put under a lot of pressure there, and it immediately looked like the getaway from Moberg was that tiny little bit better, which then in the end got him the run on the Aston Martin. He even had the inside line and couldn't use it properly. Max already up 4 positions up into P14. Gosking with a very good start, up by 3 positions. Same with Damiano. And Hersey has dropped from 9th all the way down into 13th, as Kieran and ASY are fighting it out for P6 at the moment.
Oh!
And a very bad camera angle, and it looks like ASY has gone off.
Huge
and
crash.
Once again a crash! As he rejoined very unsafely, Jabraka got taken out by him and has dropped all the way down into last. Probably has got some from wing damage as well, as Damiano now swoops around the outside. Great move on ASY from him, and it looks like it just looked like that was a very unsafe rejoin, and he just completely collected Jabraka, which is not good at all for the Constructors' Championship.
No, that's not what Jabraka needed, and I tell you what as well, when ASY recovered after the battle with Kieran, he also took Denzo off the racetrack as well, so Denzo got affected by that too. A lot going on there. It was all a bit messy. And a real shame for Jabraka. He was the innocent party in that as Max makes a move around the outside of Denzo as he continues his charge through the field. Max now up to P11 despite Hersey's attempt to look up the inside of him. That would have been very brave indeed.
Yeah, Max, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if he wins this race. Vincenzo was willing to go back past Hersey, as he now once again goes off the racetrack and now has to pit, probably because of some front wing damage he picked up on that lap. Right now Ryman is not too far away from Rick as well in P5, having his eye on that podium position in third, that at the moment is in control of his teammate Gabriel, who was able to defend himself against the Alfa Romeo of Rick, who then was able to pass one of the Haas drivers, but not both of them. And it looks like an Aston Martin has gone off. That is Johan, and he's completely lost his front wing as well.
Wow, Aston Martin's championship contention, the constructors, is falling apart. Jabraka off, now Johan as well. What is going on at Aston Martin? Jabraka obviously no fault of his own, but looks like Johan lost it by himself while in the lead of the race.
And he has to now get that car back into the pit lane. Well, it still looks like he doesn't even lose that much time at the moment. And a big moment for Ghost King there as Johan gets overtaken down the inside by Damiano. He will just think, please, just let me go back to the pits, as he gets clipped by Damiano on the outside. Damiano should have given him a bit more room than that. He knows that Johan has got no front wing whatsoever, so it was clear he was going to understeer into the side of the AlphaTauri, but he didn't give much room. And Johan now has to find his way into the pit lane with those cars being on the inside of him. But he is now inside the pits, and on lap 4, both Aston Martins had to come in for a front wing change.
Wow, that 12 points that they needed to win it looking quite unlikely at this stage, you'd have to say. And with everyone starting on the same compound tyre, it also doesn't really give you that much opportunity to go on a different strategy, really.
It looks like... Oh, okay. Jabraka and Denzo both pit again. Maybe...
They're going to go hard to the end?
Probably. What makes sense? No, Jabraka doesn't. Jabraka goes for another front wing change. Maybe he didn't change his front wing on the previous pit stop, and now he's gone onto soft tyres. Okay, that's interesting.
Wow. Yeah, no more Jabraka either. Maybe you're right. Maybe he didn't change his front wing, which is always frustrating as a driver. You just feel like you're throwing your race away. But back at the front, this is an opportunity for redemption for Mobarak, you have to say. He may feel like he was cruelly robbed of a win last week, but he's got the lead at the moment. He's closing in on getting that 1 second window to Gabriel behind as well. So this is looking pretty solid for Mobarak at this stage of the race. And it's also worth noting he's saving more of his battery than Gabriel too. So you get the feeling if you're Rick in P3, you need to make a move on the Haas driver soon, because he's losing a lot of time.
It looks like Gabriel has got some connection issues, because his car is lagging quite a lot as Rick gets a good run on him, has a little look up the inside, but decides to stay behind. And that's the tricky thing with the lagging car in front. You're never quite certain where the car is at the point you start to brake, and Ghost King just got overtaken by Damiano, who's now up into 6th. Good race from him so far, the AlphaTauri driver. Now not too far away behind his teammate. It looks like Mobarak is able to pull a little bit of a gap now, as he's got the clean air ahead of him after Johan's mistake.
Yeah, Johan will be absolutely kicking himself in that mistake, but it's a long race, and all you need is a safety car to bring you back into contention. He'll be hoping he doesn't have a black box Australia curse where you wait all race for a safety car and then never get one. So we'll keep an eye on how his race goes on. Here goes Rick down the inside into turn 12 on Gabriel. A simple enough move, and I think one that had to be made because he couldn't allow Mobarak to keep pulling away. And we'll see now if Rick can take the challenge to the race leader a bit better than what Gabriel was doing.
Yeah, very close in between Gabriel and Rick there. Coming through turn 14. Turn 15, sorry. And he's back where he started now, as Rick goes a bit wide, and maybe Rick will be now able to close that gap back down once again to race leader Mulbrook, who built a bit of a gap and got himself outside that 1 second window from behind. But Rick swiftly came back into it with only 17% of ERS though. He is using his charge that he has got available, while Mulbrook is still above 80%. And that's going to help him while he has to defend that position.
Yeah, Mulbrook is the only person in the top 10 who has over 50% battery. That's so that's quite a statement Mulbrook sending out there. The pace that he's got, he's able to conserve his battery and maintain his lead pretty comfortably. Just keeping an eye on Max, who's right behind ASY in the battle for P8. So Max continuing his charge through the field, and he's looking like he wants to try and get past his Ferrari pretty quickly. But of course, the Ferrari's going to have DRS as well.
Yeah, but here comes our championship winner. Max pulls to the inside. Not a big defense from ASY. And past him he goes up into P8, which at the moment would still not be enough to win the championship in the Constructors, but he's still got plenty of time left to do it, and with Johan being 17 seconds behind P15 after his pit stop, and with another pit stop yet to make, because he won't be able to take those mediums all the way to the end, he has not got the worst of chances to win the Constructors title, nearly all by himself. If he wins it by more than 1 point, he has actually done it all by himself.
Yeah, it's just quite an achievement, really. I mean, I was going to say Alfa Romeo might still have an outside chance, but they would really need both drivers right at the front of the field, and I'm not really getting a sense that Kryptonite's got the pace around Austin to make that happen. Rick, on the other hand, is looking like he could get a strong result, but they're probably going to need both Alfa Romeos probably in the top 2 positions, really, and that doesn't look like it's going to happen right now. One team that is doing quite well, I'm not going to say Haas because they're essentially 2 reserve drivers, but the AlphaTauris behind them are quietly going about their business. Kieran, we know, can be a very fast driver on his day, contending for wins and podiums, but like you mentioned about Damiano, maybe slightly less what we've seen of him fighting at the front, but he's doing a good job this evening. I mean, Damiano does have 20 points to his name this season, but it's worth noting he's not had a finish better than 7th place in those 20 points. He's just been consistently at the bottom end of the points. This could be the race for him to change that, but he's starting to come under a bit of pressure, and he's a bit detached from his teammate, which is leaving him slightly vulnerable.
So right now watching Max catching up to Ghost King at the moment. Kieran picks up a penalty. Nice commentator's curse there, Jake.
Had to happen.
Yeah, it's the final race of the season, so might as well for a final time curse someone. But yeah, it just looks like for the first time this season, I think, I've seen Max make a little mistake. Coming out of the S section, he went a bit wide and had to correct a moment of oversteer he had. But still, he managed to come back into that 1 second window as ASY picks up his first penalty, same with Hersey. So it looks like it's going to be a bit of a difficult race for some drivers in terms of keeping it inside the white lines. And speaking of difficult, it might become a bit more difficult now for Mulbrook, as he's now only 4 tenths ahead of Rick, as he's caught up massively. But remember that Mulbrook has got a lot of spare energy left, so he will have a lot to defend with.
Yeah, Rick is definitely having to use a lot more of his battery usage. I think he used quite a bit of it to get past Gabriel. But nevertheless, Rick's putting this fight up to Mulbrook pretty well, and he may have to start using some of his battery charge to make sure he keeps in the leads. He has a huge moment out of turn 19, the penultimate corner. Mulbrook trying to get on the power. He's coming under a bit of pressure now, and we'll see how he gets on. And Gabriel is just starting to struggle to stay over top 2 again. He doesn't want to lose that 1 second window to those leading cars. He wants to stay there if he can. As you'd have to say right now, it's a 5-way fight at the front with the next group of cars headed up by Damiano, with Max trying to put some more pressure on Ghost King.
It's only going to be a matter of time until he passes him as well. And then, as soon as he enters the top 6, I think he will find himself in a position to win the championship in the Constructors. Not too sure though. It's not. It would be P5, wouldn't it?
Yes, you would need P5. Yeah.
As long as both Aston Martin stay outside the points.
Which we wouldn't have seen coming about 9 laps ago.
Yeah. At the start of the race, we thought Aston Martin was in a prime position to win the Constructors' title, and now we think that Max is on the charge to take the championship all on his own, as he has a little look on the inside of Ghost King. Is he given the room? Yes, he is, but he has to back out of that move, otherwise it would have got a bit too close for comfort and might have cost him his front wing. And that is exactly what pointed him out from all the others this season. Even if he committed himself to a move that might go wrong, he was still somehow able to escape from that tricky situation without any damage whatsoever.
Yeah, his ability in wheel-to-wheel combat has been very solid and very mature as well at times. He's had the aggressiveness to fight, but also not put his car ever in a too risky of a position. Rick is really close to Mobarak through VS's. I wonder if he's going to get an opportunity once we get out of turn 12. And it's also worth to point out as well, I don't know if he's made a mistake somewhere, but you may notice that Kieran has just dropped off this leading group of cars a bit, so he must have maybe made a mistake somewhere. So it's essentially at the moment a group of 4 fighting it out for this race lead.
Mobarak still having a lot of energy to spend. He feels a bit more secure than what others would feel at the moment. Doesn't feel like it's necessary to defend just yet. It would be necessary for Ghost King, but he doesn't do so. He's trying to hold it around the outside, but he has to eventually give up on that position against Max. And he is up to P7 on lap 10 from 18th to 7th. Not too bad, I reckon.
Yeah, he's making his way through the field really nicely, and he didn't actually get too much help for quite a few laps, because it was first couple of laps was relatively clean between a lot of the drivers. It was only around 4 or 5 laps in when we had a bit of contact that gifted Max a couple of places. He's had to work hard to get up to P7, and his gap to the leader is 6.6 seconds, so it's not unassailable, but he's if you just want to win this race, he's going to have to work pretty damn hard between now and the checkered flag, as we've got Alberto making a move up the inside of turn 1 to take P10 away from Zane in the lower end of the points.
As it's become a 3-way fight now for the final points paying position, on track at least. ASY has got a penalty, so does Ghost King. But on track they're still inside the points. And it's now dependent on how far those guys are going to drop behind P8 and P9. They are willing to stay inside those 3 seconds, obviously. But we're not quite certain if they can do, and it feels like Mobarak is still quite comfortable in that first position, even though he's given Rick behind the slipstream and the DRS. As Fruitful has now gone past Zane as well. He's dropped from P10 to P12 within a matter of half a lap. Oh, as Fruitful loses the rear end a little bit, coming out of turn 15.
Yeah, I'm not too sure what's happened with Zane there, but lost a couple of positions on his last lap and needs to try and recover. He's had a bit of understeer going to turn 19. I wonder if he's picked up a bit of damage, because it's unusual for a driver to lose so many places on one lap, and he looks like he may be having a bit of trouble with the car through those corners where you really need a pointy front end. I'm looking at Max, who I think is going to be in a position to potentially overtake Damiano by the DRS straight.
And I'm looking at the gap in between Johan and race leader Mobrag, and it's only 26 seconds. So he's not too far off, but he probably will have to make another pit stop. But he could go into the mediums, and if he keeps that pace up and the others pit at the right time for him, he might still be able to get a points finish out of this race, because his pace seems to be very good so far. As Max has gone past Damiano.
Yeah, comfortable move down the DRS straight before they even get to turn 12, and now we'll see what kind of pace Max has got, because he's actually got a bit of clear air in front of him until he gets to Kieran, who I don't know what's happened to Kieran, but he's definitely dropped off the pace of that leading group of 4. I wonder if he's nervous about getting more penalties or if he's got some damage. But either way, Kieran's pace has really vanished, and it has become a group of 4 now. Kieran's not involved in this lead fight at the moment, so we'll keep an eye on Rick. Not really an opportunity to challenge Mobrak just yet. It could do with saving a bit of battery, but at the same time, it's got to be where he doesn't then lose the DRS window to our race leader, who seems very comfortable at the moment, and he doesn't seem to have too many concerns with the cars behind him. He's conserving his battery, driving pretty consistently by the looks of things, and yeah, looking very, very solid out front and looking to right the wrongs of last week.
Yeah, I feel like he isn't worried all too much at the minute. Rick, meanwhile, is still using his ERS to somehow stay with the Ferrari up ahead. Only having a quarter of his entire battery charge left. And Damiano's willing to stay with Max at the moment, still 6 tenths behind the championship winner, as Max is closing in on Kieran, and at the moment, as it stands, he would win the Constructors' title as well, because they would be equal on points, as he would be P5 with Kieran's penalty. But Williams has had more wins, or I should rather say Max has had more wins than both Aston Martin drivers.
Yeah, so if Max can make one more overtake, he'll be in the position he needs to take the Constructors' Championship, which is quite incredible. I mean, no one would have seen this coming earlier on in the season. It's quite a feat to win Constructors' Championship when you haven't had any real help from your teammate. As Ghost King pits, he was running inside the top 10. Is there a front wing change? Nova is not. He's just making his change onto mediums. It looks like Kryptonite.
As it looks like he has spun out of the final corner. Penultimate corner, sorry.
I don't think Austin is a track he enjoys.
No, it doesn't look like it, but sums up his season quite well, sadly.
What might interest you is that Ghost King has just come out just behind Johan. Now that's roughly where Johan is in comparison to those who haven't stopped yet.
So he regained a little bit of time, definitely, because of that front wing change. He, in theory, should have been behind Ghost King by now, but he has caught up enough time to now be ahead of someone who was running well inside the top 10. So
keep an eye on this lap, see if anyone responds to Ghost King's early pit stop.
But I gotta say, Damiano's not letting go of Max just yet. He's still within that 1 second. He has used his battery charge, but so has Max. And I think we're gonna see pit stops now. Yes, Malbrook. Same with Max and Damiano. Kieran stays out. Alberto picks up a penalty. Hopefully Malbrook doesn't get held up. Yeah, I was hoping for it to be glitched, and it was. So it looks like Morbrook wasn't held up at all. He comes out in clean air, which is important for him now, in order to gain enough time on Rick and Gabriel, or to not lose too much time to Rick and Gabriel, in order to stay ahead, as Johan is in P12 just behind Ghost King, who wanted to get past Damiano but wasn't quite able to do so. It looks like Johan's tyres are not in the best shape anymore. But he's hoping for that safety car that he desperately needs.
Yeah, it's crucial for Damiano to keep that place over Ghost King. Ghost King nearly making the undercut work, and Max rejoining in front of him as well. But Damiano literally had to park it just in front of Ghost King on the exit of turn 1. That gave him actually the opportunity to overtake Johan, who was a bit stuck behind the AlphaTauri driver. So Ghost King did manage to gain 1 position, but he really would have loved to have gained 2 as he goes for it. Up inside to turn 12, does the AlphaTauri give him the space? He does. Ghost King actually runs too much over the curb in an attempt to make sure he doesn't hit the AlphaTauri driver, so he picks up a penalty because of that. And to add insult to injury, it's a double whammy because he hasn't made the overtake stick, and he's got a penalty in trying to do so.
Yeah, not ideal for the Mercedes driver, who hasn't had the best of seasons in F3 this year. Let's look at Rick. Where does he come out in comparison to our previous race leader, Morbrook? Morbrook is comfortably ahead, as Ryman is right behind his teammate now.
Max and Kieran rejoin side by side, but it's Max who has the tyres up to temperature more and makes the move stick. So Max has made a move on Kieran in the pit stop phase.
As I'm right now trying to figure out, yeah, Morbrook just went past Hersey before the DRS straight, actually. So he doesn't even need the rear wing open in order to pass the LP, who's still yet to make his probably and hopefully one and only pit stop.
Here comes Ryman on his teammate for tonight, Gabriel, and Ryman also makes the undercuts work for him, but had to make the move on the racetrack. He couldn't quite make the undercut work for the pit stop phase. Gabriel then picks up a penalty as well, so double whammy for him as he tried to look at getting back past Ryman. He went too far over the curb and also picks up a time penalty.
The gaps have widened a little bit as Max is now in P6. Effectively it will become P5 once Hersey pits, and he does so now. So Max now officially, even on track, is in a position to win the championship in the Constructors. In theory, not on his own though, because he wouldn't do it without that 1 point his teammate got.
Yes, that 1 point for Victor, incredibly, will become pretty crucial by the end of the proceedings. If it finishes as it is now, as Zane and Kryptonite battling further down the order, Zane gets the move on turn 1. Kryptonite tries to fight it on the exit of turn 2, but has nowhere to go, and the Alpine driver moves up to P12. Kryptonite P13, and he hasn't actually made a pit stop yet either, so his race just kind of going from bad to worse, as I believe Johan has come in for another set of mediums, so he'll be going to the end from here, but he really could do with a safety car because he's got so much ground to make up, as Gabriel takes back 3rd place from his teammate Ryman, but the two Haas cars are going to fight it out. Ryman picks up a penalty as well, so these two so busy focused on each other, they're forgetting about the track limits.
Yeah, I remember that scenario somehow. Both Haas fighting, and the one that gets overtaken gets a penalty around turn 15. This time 1 lap later, and the other way around. Interesting. So maybe they should stop fighting around that corner if they don't want to drop down on too much. And
yeah,
Max
they can.
is, after starting P18 on lap 18, he is in P5.
Yeah, and I hope I'm not going to jinx this, but I mean, even if things go horribly wrong from here, I don't know about you, but I feel like Rick can take a lot of confidence from this race. It's really what he needed, given how things have gone previously. He's running P2 very solidly. He's not under any pressure at the moment, really, either. He's got a decent gap to the Haas cars behind. And this really is what Rick needed, a race near the front where he feels like he's competitive again, because things really haven't gone his way recently. And I'm really happy for Rick because, like you say, after Spa especially, he deserved a race like this.
Gotta say, the good this season was, this race has probably so far, I'm hoping to jinx something here right now, this race has so far been the most quiet race of the season, I would say. No safety cars so far, not too many on-track battles that were really battles, because most of the overtakes that happened were just, you know, simple overtakes with the one ahead, who was ahead, not really defending his position. And I feel like this race doesn't display how the races went, but it kind of displays how the season and the championship went.
Yeah, we've had the championship ultimately hasn't proven to be a nail biter down to the wire, but we've had so many great races in F3 this season. But you're absolutely spot on. This is, so far at least, not proving to be one that's going to live longest in the memory. I hope the next 10 laps changes that, but we are desperately in need of something to ignite this one. I think it's fair to say, as Rick picks up a penalty, and Mobrak will love that view behind him. He's got 3 drivers, all with penalties behind him. He'll be feeling very comfortable right now at the front of this race, with once again more ERS to spare than all the guys around him.
That was actually the exact opposite of what we needed. If it was the other way around, if Mobrak would have picked up a penalty right now, it would have made that fight for the race win more interesting. But now the gap has essentially gone up to 5 seconds instead of 2. And I think I jinxed it the wrong way round. I said it was the most quiet race, and now suddenly the battle for the lead has gone even more quiet.
Unlike my throat, apparently. Yeah, for Max, potentially, he could pick up a few positions at the end with the way the penalties are going. Just trying to look, there's a decent fight could be brewing for sort of P7 down to P10. Damiano, Ghost King, Alberto, and ASY. Once again, Damiano in P7. He's had quite a few P7s this season. I mentioned that's his best result. Despite how well he's actually collected up points, they've all been very minor points that he's picked up on quite a few occasions, and Damiano in that position once again. I'm just having a look, actually. Rick unfortunately is too far back to try and claim P2 in the championship, but this is doing him good in his battle for P4 against Kieran, who's currently down in P6. We've got a yellow flag in Sector 3 Denso. That was briefly 4, I believe. Rick is closing out gaps slowly but surely to Mobrak, but that penalty will mean that Mobrak's not really going to be feeling too much pressure at this stage.
Yeah, I was excited for a little bit once I saw that yellow flag, but that excitement was quickly cut down as the yellow flag just disappeared once again. Ghost King currently the closest. No, Vengeance actually making an overtake on Kryptonite, who's got a race to forget tonight. Sitting in P14 on hard tires.
Yeah, I don't think he's actually made a stop yet.
He didn't, and he's still P14. Wow. Okay.
I think that tells everything about his race, sadly. He just hasn't had the pace. He's maybe going for soft tyres to try and get past this lap, but I mean, if a few of us behind him do the same thing, I don't see Kryptonite being the quickest stop for drivers on soft tyres. So, yeah, it's one of those.
Well, here goes King down the inside, maybe into turn 1. He's given the run by Damiano, but can't quite make the move stick, and that nearly opened the door for Alberto behind to have a little look on the Mercedes driver. But not quite, and now he's basically sitting right behind that rear wing of that Mercedes, but not in a position where he can make an overtake through the first sector. That's quite difficult, apart from turn 1. We've got yellow flags, and yeah, Kryptonite's evening has gone even worse. Really a race to forget as he spins once again with his overheated tyres. He's probably willing to retire now, but he'll have to pay. And he's got a puncture on the rear right. That's why he spun.
Oh dear, it's quite a way back to the pits from there as well. It's I don't know what strategy he was going for, maybe going on soft tyres, but he's pushed those hards too long and he's got a puncture. But ultimately his pace has just been seriously off tonight. Not what we'd expect from him, even though his season's been a bit up and down. I don't remember Kryptonite being this far for pace.
As he's trying to limp back to the pits now, causing a yellow flag, which is not going to affect anything. Fruitful retires inside the pit lane, as Kryptonite is struggling to hold the car on the track, even with basically only three tires. That's understandable. He's trying to limp back now through the third sector. And he's still ahead of Jabraka though. He's also had a nightmare of a race this evening. Through, mainly no fault of his own. With that unsafe rejoin on the first couple of laps.
Yeah, it's Jabraka definitely the unluckiest driver tonight because he's ended up at the back through no fault of his own, really. He was the unlucky party, and as I say, that Jabraka's gone for a spin out of turn 18, so he's having trouble as well as he just gets lapped, I believe, by the race leaders, who have only got 6 laps to go, and Mob looking in a very comfortable position. I've just noticed, though, we've had a lull in this race, but while that's happened, I've just noticed Ryman has dropped a few positions.
I was just about to ask if you mentioned it, and I just didn't realize that you mentioned it. But I was also thinking, wait, why is Max in P4? And why is he 3.7 behind? And then I saw Ryman in P6, so there must have been a mistake or something from Ryman that dropped him down quite far, because he was 2 seconds ahead of Max in P4. And now he's 2.5 seconds behind Kieran in P6.
Yeah, but that's not at all. Ryman made a mistake. I wonder if he's had a spin. And he looks like he's got no damage, but he's rejoined in P6, lost a few places. And like I say, promotes Max to P4. Max is only 6/10 away from putting himself in a podium position, which is an incredible turnaround, given that really usually if you need to do a last to first kind of drive, as Alberto moves up the inside of Ghost King into turn 12 and takes P8. That was actually a nice move. It wasn't completely done by the DRS. But yeah, as I was going to say about Max, it's especially brilliant that he finds himself in a podium fighting position, because he hasn't really had the sort of adventurous, crazy race that would give someone a chance to get from the back to the front.
5-second penalty for Denzo for crossing the white line at pit exit. Since when is this a thing?
Wow, that's
new.
You wouldn't really expect. Yeah, you wouldn't really expect anyone to do that, really. But Denzo clearly lost his focus, obviously down near the back of the field, and yeah, he's got a penalty for that one.
Was it always the case? Because I thought that, Mobrog was penalised afterwards from the PSGL stewards
I
for
think
crossing the red line. But,
I think Mobrak's penalty may have been for when he entered the pit lane. I'm wondering if Denzo's was when he exited the pit lane. I don't think the game punishes you for entry, but I think the PSGL rules usually mean you have to commit quite early to the pits, and maybe Mobrak didn't do that last week.
yeah, I was just surprised that the game even penalises you for the pit exit as well, because I didn't see it. I thought you'd usually only get a warning and that's it. But it looks like you can also get a penalty.
Well, Denzo's definitely found out, I would say, to his cost, but given where he is, I don't actually think it's going to cost him that much. Sadly, down in P15, it's probably because he's where he is that he actually made that mistake. So, that's in concentration, perhaps. Max I wouldn't say Max's pace is all that stunning tonight compared to what we're used to seeing from him. And Kieran, in fact, is actually hanging on to the back of him very well indeed. I wonder if he's going to be in a position to fight him at some point. Of course, they've got different penalty situations, but Kieran would love to show that he's got the capabilities to fight with a PSGL free champion and maybe send a message to those above that he also deserves a shot, potentially in a higher tier. So, you know, little things like that can make a huge difference. So we'll see if Kieran can mount a challenge. It's all as you were at the front, and Mobrak must just be thinking, keep it within the track limits. Don't put yourself in any more danger than you need to. Mobrak knows how easily a race win can be taken from him after last week. He won't want to do anything to jeopardise that at all this evening.
Yeah, right now 1.6 seconds ahead of Rick, very comfortable, having about 20% of ERS, while Rick is basically used it all. And Max, one of only 5 drivers here tonight without a penalty, one of them also being our race leader, Mobrak. The other 3 being outside the top 10. So yeah, once again from 18th to 4th, just yeah, proves this point of a championship winner, and I'm very keen to see how he's going to do in F2 next season.
Yeah, he's aiming for his 7th podium of the season tonight. If he can just get within that 3 second of Gabriel, which he's very close to doing. It'll be Mobrak's, I believe. Yeah, Mobrak, this will be his first podium of the season after last week's debacle. But he, so this will be good for him. In fact, a lot of confidence for Mobrak, I think, to take going into next season, because he's really shown some good pace these last sort of 2-3 races. And finding himself at the front on a more regular basis, which he'll be happy with. Rick going for his 4th podium of the season, and all three of his other podiums were the first 3 races, which tells its own story really. And then you've got Gabriel, who also will be looking for his first podium. In fact, it's only the 2nd time we've seen Gabriel race in the tier, and his other finish saw him got 5th place. So he's obviously a driver that's also pretty capable on his day.
Yeah, hopefully he'll get a full-time seat next season. I've got to say, attendance in general was very good through the entirety of the championship, especially considering at what stage of the game we're in. And I think the least amount of drivers we had was around 16, 17, somewhere around there. Pretty good. And also for the last round here now, with everything basically being decided, apart from the Constructors' Championship, which is now going to go to Williams and Max. Pretty impressive to still see 18 drivers being in this race.
I will say
Ooh, and Max picks up a penalty.
That's probably going to end his podium chances and potentially give Kieran a bit of a kick to try and grab people off from him. So Max won't be scoring his 7th podium this season in this race, unless they've got more drama to come. Max, unusual for him picking up penalties. Usually very good at avoiding those, but this is, I'd say, one of the hardest tracks to avoid picking up penalties on. It is definitely one of those that can easily catch you out. But yeah, who would have thought it? A driver called Max dominating a Formula One league.
Max might come under a bit of pressure. Maybe it's just a thing of himself wanting to win the championship and the constructors completely on his own, because as it stands he wouldn't need that 1 point that Victor has got in Bahrain, as we've got yellow flags further down. I think that's an Aston Martin. That might have been Jabaka. Yeah, that was Jabaka.
We're on the final lap of the race, and it looks like Max versus Kieran is probably the only fight that can be decided on the track unless someone makes a mistake, because everyone else is kind of pretty spread out. And you have to say, Mobrak out front has driven this race pretty perfectly, and I don't see that he's done anything tonight that will take away this race win. And you have to say it's thoroughly deserved for him. He's done a great job.
Yeah. Gotta say though, Mobrak, the only driver inside the top 10 to not get a penalty. Impressive. Good stuff from him. And I'm just wondering if Kieran has got any chance to attack Max on this final lap. He's only half a second behind. He's using his EOS. He's got the rear wing open, but it's not going to be enough to get past the championship winner. He tries to make him nervous, but Kieran, that is Max ahead of you. He won't get nervous, no matter what you do. You could be right next to him and there wouldn't be a single increase of his heart rate, I think. As Marlborough rounds now the final 2 corners for the final time this race, and for the final time this season, he crosses the line. Not to win.
Wow. That's astonishing. Well, Max does get a podium. I can't believe that Mobrak's done that. So Rick wins the US Grand Prix. I'm astonished. He must have not realised how far of a run to the line he had, and has absolutely made an absolute mess of that attempt to cross the line. And yeah, as a result, Mobrak for a second week in a row is not going to win when he probably should. And Rick wins the US Grand Prix. And
you know what the thing is? If that was on accident, I feel sorry. If he deliberately, and I think that was the case, he did deliberately, just because I don't know why drivers do it, but some drivers want to spin across the line or crash across the line or whatever. And I think that's exactly what he tried to do. So I gotta say, I don't feel sorry at all. I'm sorry, but I don't feel so. If that was intentional, that he wanted to crash or spin across the line, I don't feel sorry at all. So congratulations to Rick, who wins and finishes the season the way he started it in the first 3 races. And maybe that's a good sign for the start of next season. Maybe he can carry this momentum then. And I gotta say, I really like seeing him on that top step, because he had a lot of bad luck this season. As Gabriel takes second, and Max picks up another podium. Wonder oh wonder, in other words, water is wet. And yeah, just, you know, even without that crash, he would have been forward. And just once again proved his point and proved his dominance this season.
Well, Mobrak said in the chat he thinks he crashed after the line. I don't think he was anywhere near the line, to be honest. I think he made a complete dog's dinner of whatever he was trying to do. I've seen drivers spin across the line when they finish P14 in DNF. That's fair enough. You're not really losing anything. Doing it when you're in the race lead, I really I'm a bit of a loss on that one. I don't understand it, and he's made himself, use a better word, make himself look a bit of a berg, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I'm just reading the chat. And yeah, Kryptonite actually said I did half the race with a throttle that wouldn't go above 85%. So maybe that's the reason why he had the pace he had. Because that will cost you quite a lot of lap time. And Mobrook was actually... He didn't know that he didn't win. He asked if it was a DNF.
Do you want to know something incredible now? With that win, Rick has actually taken second place in the championship.
Yes, yeah, well,
I'll tell you what, for all the bad luck Rick's had, I think he's just had a big slice of good luck.
Yeah. Well, Mobrook wanted to celebrate, so I'm sorry, but there's no bit of... I just don't feel sorry for that happening, because, you know, Rick said it in the chat. That's why I never do that. And I just don't know why people see it as a celebration to spin across the line, because that's exactly what happened. The game nearly saved him as well, because his car, after he crashed, his car actually slid a couple of meters further, and that nearly got him across the line. So without us, as the only driver who was starting, or who came across the final corner inside the top 10, he still didn't win because he wanted to celebrate and celebrated a bit too early. And yeah,
do it when you're outside the points and you have nothing to lose if that happens. Don't do it if you're about to win the race.
I would say he learned his lesson now. In the most brutal way you can get, but you know, no reason.
I've got to say though, it woke me up at the end, because if we're putting it as politely as possible, that was one of the quieter races that we've had.
Yeah, I'm glad you said it, because I would have described it a bit different. But yeah, that was an anticlimactic way to end the season, I would say. Not really
the season
fitting.
with a bang.
Yeah, but not really fitting to the other races we've had throughout the season, because I really can't remember a single race that was really dull or anything. I think we always had good battles, at least somewhere inside on the track. And well, this race hasn't really summed up this season quite well. And yeah, maybe it was just because it's Austin or whatever, but who knows. But hopefully next season we will see more kind of races like we had in the previous 10 rounds. Very good ones. And yeah, I really enjoyed this season in general, all in all. Maybe not tonight, maybe not too much, but in general, I very much enjoyed this season.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and I'm already looking forward to being back for next season 33, and the opening round is just 3 weeks away, and I believe it's Spain that opens off next season. So hopefully we're once again teamed up, and if so, hopefully again it's this division, and we can see more great racing, and probably a lot of his names return again for next season. If Mobrak is in this division, I hope he finishes the race.
Well, he had the chance to get his redemption from last week, and he used it right until 5 meters before the end, and just threw it all away into the wall. And yeah, he finishes the season off with no race win. But he'll have another shot probably next season. And I hope you all enjoyed this season 32 in PSGL. I certainly did. And as I heard, you did too, Jake. and hopefully we will be back in 3 weeks' time when we go back racing for season 33. Would be fitting actually if Max would have dominated next season with the name and the 33, but he did it one season prior, and he will be happy to be in F2 probably next season. I would be surprised if not. But I hope you all enjoyed, maybe not too much this race, but the rest of the season, the previous 10 rounds we've had, and I hope you all enjoyed the streams we did each and every week for you, and we're hoping to see you again once we go racing for a final time on this F1 game, probably, maybe, who knows. And yeah, anything else to say?
No, just yeah, hope everyone who's watching has a good break, and yeah, see you next season.
With that being said, that is everything. That is goodbye from us in season 32 of PSGL, and we'll see you in season 33. Goodbye, and take care.